Welcome today, the Tony C. Davis Show. I am here with Pastor Mel Keyes of Joshua House of Worship. I'm going to give just a few minutes, Pastor, to go ahead and let a couple of people get on. How are you doing this morning?
Man, I'm doing great, man of God. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas to you. Just a couple of days away, and just taking this moment to just connect with some people and just share some information about what you're doing for the kingdom of God, and also in the area of business. Again, like I said, just want to give a minute or so for somebody to get on and just share this information. But again, this will be recorded and it'll get out. So don't want to hold you too long. So again, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Mel Keyes, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Bedford-Stuyvesant. Grateful for the upbringing I had with my mom and her parents. Right there in the heart of Brooklyn. Became a member at Mount Carmel Baptist Church, got baptized there as a teenager. But I went into the military, United States Air Force, at the age of 17, turned 18 while I was in basic training, Lackland Air Force Base. And I'm grateful to God that I was able to meet so many great people along the path. So I have people that have really sold into my life from my coming up years all the way through my military years and outside of that. And really, I'm just spending my time paying it forward. I've received much, so I believe that much is required.
So how long were you in the military?
I spent 10 years active duty, and then I was a reservist for 7 years.
Oh, well, thank you for your service.
Thank you, man. You're welcome.
Yeah. So just wanted to bring you on, just talk about, again, some of the things you're doing to advance the kingdom and also help those who are in entrepreneurship. And so just share with us, whether you were actually brought up in an environment that encouraged entrepreneurship. Since you were brought up in the Christian family, yes. Did you have that kind of training when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I won't say that the training was intentional, but I think that just about every brother coming up in Brooklyn sees some kind of entrepreneurship, some kind of way. I do have a family of entrepreneurs. I really didn't find out much about that until I became an adult. I have grandparents on both sides, mother and father's side, that were in ministry and business at the same time. And again, I found that out as an adult. But looking back over my life and in hindsight, as we say, there were so many things that we would get involved with in terms of what we would call wholesale. Kids on the street. I mean, we would go uptown. We would purchase maybe some cutlery sets, maybe some clothing and things of that sort at a wholesale price. And then we would bring it back to the neighborhood and almost go door by door selling those things. And that was really my first entrepreneurship experience. And I was probably 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe even a little bit younger, could have been younger, but at least 14 or 15, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think back to my childhood, growing up, I had, lawn service. I actually go and, we call it cutting grass here in right. Georgia. but so we would, cut the grass and also, wash cars. But really, as a child, we didn't think of it as a business. We just thought, parents go out there and make your own money, but we never thought about setting up as a business. And so that's something that we should encourage our young people, start you a business, turn that little, hustle,
that's right,
lawn care business, that's something we oftentimes miss. Did you consider it a business at that time, or were you just making some money?
Man, I was hustling. That's what we called it. And you know what? It taught me a lot of discipline, though, because we had to learn how to travel by both bus and subway. It's strange. I tell my kids, especially my younger one at home, we were doing things at a much younger age and being more responsible than what we see kids nowadays, of course. And I think every generation probably says the same thing. But here it was, I was leaving Brooklyn, going all the way uptown, Manhattan, Bronx, whatever, to get the items, bring them back, then going throughout our neighborhood, door by door. So that was a lot of responsibility. And the thing of it is, I enjoyed it. I found a gift in that. but it lay dormant for a number of years after I went into the military. So once I went into the military, it was a whole new world for me to make those adjustments and really get acquainted with that. And it was a while before I began to really tap back into that entrepreneurial spirit that God had given me.
Well, when we talk about, again, we're talking about you being in ministry and, pastoring. How do you balance the ministry and also business? And do you try to keep it separate, or do they, kind of work collectively hand in hand?
Well, again, ministry is one of those things. I mean, it's my heart and my soul of who I am at a young age. Again, after I got, I would say, rebaptized, I rededicated my life back to the Lord when I got into the military. And that's when I really began to realize the calling of God on my life. I became a youth leader, Sunday school teacher, deacon, and eventually I saw God moving me in the area of preaching. And that was an experience all by itself. But in the midst of all of those years, I was also finding out my heart for entrepreneurship, for being in business. As a young kid, I saw myself as a businessman before I saw myself as anything. Saw myself carrying briefcases and giving presentations and all of those things. I don't know why I just gravitated towards that. Now looking back again, it all makes sense. Had a whole family of that I really didn't know those stories until I was an adult. But looking back again, it makes sense. But juggling it, balancing it, I don't even know if I would use those words. I see them as almost one and the same. You can't have one without the other. Here's what I mean by that. When you look into the scriptures, you see more times than not God using persons who were business minded. Even the great dreamer, as we know him to be, Joseph, that was a brother that was some kind of man of God, but he was also some kind of entrepreneur. Look at the wisdom that God gave him to save not just Egypt, but a whole nation. In fact, we wouldn't be here having this conversation today had God not used Joseph the way that he did. When you look at even the disciples, the apostles that the Lord picked, all of them, with a few exceptions, were business-minded persons. They knew how to operate. God was not just picking folk who weren't doing anything, that didn't have a busy schedule, that didn't have a vision for their life, a plan for their life. He picked folk that were in business, that were what I call business-minded. And I see that today, that the persons who can think along those lines, they make for good ministers. They make for persons who are in ministry, especially now, because we've gone into an age where we can't just expect folk just to come up to us and give us what we need for our ministry. You have to think outside the box. You need to be able to go to the resources and to acquire the things you need. Your gift will make room for you, so forth and so on. And if you're waiting, you're going to be waiting a long time, especially now. So I think entrepreneurship and ministry is a mix and a merge that should always be connected. I can't say that you juggle it or balance it. I mean, they're the same thing and they're the same coin on a different side, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I made a comment, and this was a while back, and a few people kind of took offense to it. I made the comment that Jesus was an entrepreneur. And, a few people kind of took offense to it because, again, if you think about it, Jesus was a carpenter.
Right.
And again, he was providing a service for somebody else. And so do you think some of that is missing within our churches today, those skills of entrepreneurship?
It's greatly missing. And you just hit it on the head, because we don't really understand what ministry really is. It's service. Is making someone else better, is giving them value, which makes you more valuable. And the more you do that, the more you're able to see that's what the best businesses are made of. You can't be in business for a long period of time anyway, successfully and effectively, unless you're doing those essential things. So the persons who can understand ministry, they can pretty much also understand the aspects and the essentials of business. They're very related. And when we separate them, we do harm on both sides.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I may have asked you this one time before. What particular skills are needed to be successful as a marketer online, and also, using these skills within the ministry? What skills are needed?
Well, the skills are ever changing, because what happens to make one successful in one generation, one time frame, may not necessarily be those needed in another time frame. The other day, I had a Yellow Pages delivered to my front door. Why, I don't know. But the thing of it is, I looked at it and I was in shock, Pastor Tony, because the size of that Yellow Pages was so small in comparison to the way that Yellow Pages used to be. What has happened? Some things have changed. Things have shifted. This digital age we're in, the social media age and culture that we're in, it has literally changed the landscape of business and ministry as we know it. And I don't believe it really will ever go back to the way that it was. So I say that to say this: skills are ever changing. Methodologies are ever changing. But the thing that must remain constant is the message. As a minister, we're a minister of the kingdom. We're a minister of the gospel. We represent as an ambassador the Lord Jesus. So those things never change. So that foundation is already laid. All we do now is we tie into those who have the skill sets for the present day, the present moment that we need. And that changes again. Maybe it used to change every 10 years, maybe every 20 years. Now it's changing every year. So what you're doing that's working right now, next year, it may very well be different.
So you have to be able to adapt.
Most definitely. Adaptability and flexibility, key things for what we need to do today. Not changing the message. I want to be clear. Not changing the message, but changing our methods.
The methods. So again, what about ministry? How does ministry use social media in this day and time to be able to draw more attention and be more effective in ministry? Because as you just said, just as in business, if you continue to do the same things, you're going to have the same results. So I believe churches should use social media, but I'd like to hear your take on it.
Most definitely. I remember there was a time in our American culture, especially, where it was very common to hear churches and ministers talk about television being from the devil, the one-eyed devil or something along those lines. Well,
yeah,
you won't find too many Christians today that would still agree with that sentiment, although the television does distribute quite a bit of evil. But it's not the television, it's the programming behind it and the programmers. So if you have the right programmers standing for righteousness, television for itself, by itself, of course, can be used for good. It's the same thing with social media. It's the same thing with everything as it relates to technology. It's not the item itself or the resource itself that's the problem. It's the persons behind it who have, as you would, evil motives. So what I tell people is master it. Be a student at it. Stay a student, because to master it, you only can master it by being a student, because it's going to change. The moment you get it figured out, guess what? It's already in a new level. Every phone that we were using 3 years ago is now obsolete, right? It's always a 5, 6, or 7, and it's going to keep going that way. Windows or Apple, it doesn't make a difference. It's always going to be something new. So stay a student at it. And if I can tell anybody anything that might be helpful, find someone that you can relate to, that you can connect with. You're like-minded, but they're a little bit ahead of where you are. And they perhaps would be willing to help you to get to where they are. Find a coach, find a mentor where there's what I call a divine connection, and work together. Get someone to help you to be what it is that you know you have it in your heart to be. We know it to be true. Iron sharpens iron. So that's the thing that I would tell people for strategies in social media and other things as well.
Well, and that last part of what you were mentioning, that's the best way to grow in anything. Find somebody that's better than you at it, and just sit back and learn those skills.
Yes. Be a student. That's it.
Well, that being said, I want to just touch on the Joshua generation.
Yes.
Again, your church rather is the Joshua House of Worship.
Yes, sir.
Where does that come from, and why are you passionate about this Joshua generation movement?
Right. My pastor with the Lord now, Clifton Phillips, the name of our church is 64 years old. Small church, but I believe in this concept, small church making a big impact. Too many times we look at sizes or the group of the people and we minimize what they're capable of doing. God can take a few and do some phenomenal things. So that's a message that I'm very acquainted with and very passionate about. But at the same time, the church was Joshua Baptist Church. And right before his death, I believe God moved on his heart and he renamed it the Joshua House of Worship. When I came behind him as pastor about a year and a half after he had been with the Lord, I just started studying Joshua like never before. I had read it a few times, the book itself, but I became very intentional about it. And what God put in my spirit, Pastor Tony, I mean, it was just a love for every principle, every precept. And it got in my spirit to the point where I started a radio station called that Joshua Generation Radio, ran that for about 4 years, got introduced and acquainted with some world-renowned leaders doing some powerful stuff, had an opportunity to interview all kind of authors, thought leaders, ministers, you name it. It was just phenomenal, some of the people that I was able to meet, to greet, and connect with. Then I was able to go a next step, and I began to prepare for writing my first 2 books, took care of that, and was blessed by that experience, and just one thing after another. So that whole possess the land, that whole doing what it is that God called us to do before we even got here. Get this, before we arrived, God already had a purpose for us. We're just now walking in what he ordained. So that whole genre of thinking is something you see throughout the book of Joshua, and that's what we're living. I have a new website. It's called IamJoshuaGeneration.com. I would encourage your listeners to check it out and see the resources there. God is doing a great thing. We're getting prepared to launch Joshua Generation TV, which is another aspect of it. So this whole philosophy, this whole way of life, I believe that we are Joshua Generation and we're claiming God's promises together right here, right now.
And I love, what you normally end with, Father's favor. Where did that come from?
God put that in my spirit when I used to send out emails, and you know how, you have that final close, sincerely or whatever. And it just came to me. I've been saying it probably now for about 15 or more years, Father's favor. I believe in the favor of God. When you have that on your life, it doesn't matter who's against you. It doesn't matter, how many folk, try to hold you back. When God's favor is on your life, it's done. And you just got to agree with God.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Well, last thing I want to ask you is how can you help someone who may be thinking about starting a business or branding their existing business or even their ministry?
Excellent. It's what I love to do. It's a passion. It's something that I've been involved with for over 15 years now. But again, everybody has a special connection with certain people. And if one of your listeners, they sense that about me, I'll be glad to begin the preliminary basis for finding out if there's a good connection. I'm a life coach. I got certified with 48 Days, Dan Miller, great man of God himself, doing a powerful thing. So not only do I believe in the ministry aspect of it, but the leadership. So the ministry, the entrepreneurship, and that leadership coming together, that's who I am. That's where I am. That's what I love to do. So if you can see yourself working with me in that aspect, I'd love to approach that and see how we can help each other. Now, understand this. If you go to my website, there's some free resources. And from there, you'll know a little bit more about me. You can go to 2 websites. First is my own website, pastormelkeyes.com. And there's 2 resources there. I like to offer these to your listeners, and they'll know if perhaps if they would like to work with me. The first one is a book that I have as an ebook. It's a free download called 7 Keys for the Best of Your Life. If you go to pastormelkeyes.com, Keyes, you'll be able to download that free book. And there's also another banner at the top of the screen. I would like to create a graphic. If you have a business or something that you're offering to others, I have a graphic that I would like to create for you. It's a free gift Just follow all the instructions once you click on that banner on the website, pastormelkeys.com. And then, of course, then go back to iamjoshuageneration.com. If you check those out and it's something that you see that you perhaps perceive a connection, let's work together. Let's see what God has in mind for us to acquire.
He is the pastor of Joshua House of Worship there in Dallas, Texas, right?
San Antonio, Texas, on the west side.
San Antonio. San Antonio. Well, again, this is Pastor Mel Keyes. Guys, reach out to him. Also, if you're interested in coming on the show, if you have a valuable product or service, a ministry, just connect with me, and I'd love to just share your valuable content. Any final words, Pastor Mel?
Man of God, I want to thank you for what you're doing. You are iron, no doubt. You're making me sharp. So I appreciate your ministry, and I look forward to connecting more in the near future. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Again, thanks, my friend. You all have a blessed one, and also Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Father's favor, man.
Father's favor. He is the pastor of Joshua House of Worship there in Dallas, Texas, right?
San Antonio, Texas, on the west side.
San Antonio. San Antonio. Well, again, this is Pastor Mel Keyes. Guys, reach out to him. Also, if you're interested in coming on the show, if you have a valuable product or service, a ministry, just connect with me, and I'd love to just share your valuable content. Any final words, Pastor Mel?
Man of God, I want to thank you for what you're doing. You are iron, no doubt. You're making me sharp. So I appreciate your ministry, and I look forward to connecting more in the near future. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Again, thanks, my friend. You all have a blessed one, and also Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Father's favor, man.
Father's favor.